Today we've got a major Kaspa update because we've seen a lot of different things going on within the Kaspa community. So I want to give a general update overall, particularly surrounding the fact that we've seen some of the larger cryptos doing quite well, but this really hasn't actually kind of trickled down into the smaller alts quite yet. And so I want to discuss all of this, some good news obviously with kind of things and goings on within the community, but also some bad news as it relates to price. So let's go on ahead, we'll dive right on in, we'll take care of all of it today. And first off, I want to take a look at the crypto bubbles because we can see bit of a mixed day. This morning earlier when I was just kind of first getting up and taking a look at everything, it was actually kind of mostly red. So we have seen kind of a general bounce in the market since then. We can see Kaspa up ever so slightly on the day. And then we have another one here, Chain Opera AI. It's just kind of, it's up 2000% in the week. This seems like, potentially another kind of cabal play when we see these pumping like this. It's definitely a little suspect to me, but we'll have to see kind of how that ends up working out. But overall, as you can see, kind of a mixed day in the market overall. Some of the more recent ones that we've seen pump and do quite well, things like XPL, Aster, 2Z, all of them kind of starting to move down a little bit. Again, kind of somewhat normal after you see such an insane move up in price. Now, the other thing I also want to take a look at too is we've actually been doing some trading on some Bitcoin here. You can see I've got a couple of shorts open. One is actually in the green right now. One is more in the red than the one that's in the green, but I'll show you kind of what I'm looking at and what we're looking for. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, no guarantees in life in terms of where trades are at. You can see one is down a little bit and one's up a little bit, but you can see here on the hourly chart, there's a couple of different things that we were seeing. So obviously we had this move to the upside. We saw this move to the downside, and we are kind of like, we're at a point where we're establishing some lower highs at this point, right? So I do think that there could be some momentum to the downside here. We open up our first short at this level where we could see a bunch of wicking and a bunch of rejection at this level. And then we open up essentially like an averaging short up at this higher level, which you could see we hit and we were also seeing similar levels of rejection. We have this stop loss up at the level at which we would see invalidation, so we'd start to move up higher. We're watching this very closely, of course. We'll have to see kind of exactly what happens here. Maybe we continue to move up. Maybe we continue to push further down. You can see where my kind of my take profits are down here at the 119,500 and the 118,700, just because we do actually have some liquidity to the downside that I could expect us sweeping before we see a further move to the upside. Again, I will be watching this very closely to see, if we continue to put in some strength up at this level, then maybe we'll cut them early. Who knows? Only time will tell. But like I said, we have our stop loss at the level, which would indicate kind of an invalidation of this kind of lower high pattern that we've seen. I'll keep you updated, of course. If you are interested, I do have those links in the description below. You can see I am using Weex here. If you are wanting to get signed up, I do have the link to Weex. And then I also do have the links to BTCC as well as BloFin. BTCC currently does have the best referral rewards if you are interested, but overall, they're all fantastic exchanges and all work quite well. So if you are interested, of course, feel free to check those out. Now, I did want to dive specifically into Kaspa as well, because I want to take a look at Bitcoin, of course, because we've seen a pullback in Bitcoin. We've seen some slight bleeding going on in Bitcoin, and this has impacted the altcoins. We really haven't seen a rotation through altcoins, despite some pretty bullish moves in both Bitcoin and Ethereum over the past several months. Now, if we take a look at Kaspa here, you can see we are still in this consolidationary picture that we've been in for months now, basically since the beginning of 2025. We are at the very, very bottom though of this consolidationary picture. So that does mean that, potentially we're in a good position to see a bounce and a continued move to the upside. But of course, it does also put us at risk of potentially falling below this level. If we were to see kind of a key level of support, it does seem to be at this kind of like 7.4 cent range. You could see back in this range, it was a key level of support. Right now, it's a key level of support. Even times in the past, also another key level of support. So we'll have to see kind of what happens going on into the future. But at least for right now, we are sitting on a very, very key level of support, as well as the structural level of support with this consolidation. So we'll have to see. But again, it would be nice to see some life and some momentum getting sparked into alts. But I don't know. I've felt it. Probably you have felt it as well. I haven't really seen as much optimism within the market lately. A lot of people, it seems like there's a general level of exhaustion. People don't really care. Views are down, interest is down, all of this type of stuff is down, which again isn't the end of the world, but it does show you that until we have a little bit more interesting things happening, people aren't really super involved. We are seeing, of course, things like BNB and Ethereum and Bitcoin do very well. BNB continues to hit all-time highs, but there just doesn't seem to be that much interest of actually what's going on here. So we'll have to see. Of course, we will be taking very close looks at all of these to make sure that we're kind of tracking along with what's happening. So I did want to get into a couple of the updates for the Kaspa ecosystem and the Kaspa community, though, because we have seen a couple. The first and most important one, I would say, here is just a couple of days back, the Kaspa network did process over 158 million transactions in a single day. This was essentially kind of like a stress test on the Kaspa network to see how many transactions could be pushed through the block DAG. What we can see, this actually almost matched Bitcoin's total transactions for the entire past year, which is super impressive. Bitcoin doing about 160 million over the past year. So it is showing that Kaspa can actually handle the volume. It can handle the throughput. Though, just to be clear, this was a test. This was a test environment, right? So this was not purely like organic transactions. This was not sustained volume. This was a short kind of spike in activity and spike in transaction volume that we did see. Now, again, that's not necessarily to discount the ability for Kaspa to hold this type of traction and this type of volume, but we're not seeing that type of like transactions per second actually organically happening on the Kaspa ecosystem quite yet. And I do think that's part of the reason we're seeing this kind of lagging in price, is because we're just not quite seeing that adoption on Kaspa again quite yet. Maybe we'll see it happening soon, but again, at this point in time, we're just not seeing that quite yet. Moving along, I want to show you this other Kaspa power law, because we could see as it got started. Let's actually move this back to the beginning here, and I'll kind of talk over it as it goes. But you could see back in 2023, we were seeing a 93 to a 94% kind of regression fit, even getting up to 95% for the Kaspa power law. Now, what you'll see in 2025 is this does start to come off the rails. You'll see here in 2025, we start to really see this regression fit really deviate quite wildly from what we had seen previously. The Kaspa power law was working, and it was holding very, very consistently for a very long time. You could see getting up to about a 96% regression fit, meaning that it was holding incredibly closely within kind of the predefined range that we were expecting. This has changed majorly since then, right? I mean, we see this actually get down to where it is currently at about 83%. The longer Kaspa continues to trend sideways, the lower we will see this regression fit go, because we're seeing kind of deviate from this kind of up and to the right like theme or methodology that we had seen prior. I'm actually going to pause it here so we can focus on some of the stuff that we have, but currently, of course, we're at about 7 cents. We can see here kind of the lower band indicating about 8 cents. We have 17.34.70 and up to $1.44 being projected by the end of 2026. Again, who's to say for sure? No one really knows exactly, but the fair value is currently sitting at about 28 cents, again, per kind of like the Kaspa power law. So we'll have to see kind of exactly what happens and where we go from here. But we are starting to see, kind of as I mentioned, 2025 has really kind of thrown us off the rails here for kind of following the Kaspa power law. So we really will have to see what goes on here. I also have heard kind of some general complaining and some general concerns regarding the actual profitability of the miners. This is something where I think, Kaspa maybe starts to struggle with the direct comparisons to Bitcoin, is because the Bitcoin miners have always kind of been the base of the ecosystem, and they've always been what has kind of driven Bitcoin up at a fundamental level. Well, Kaspa has been seeing some struggles from their miners recently, where they haven't been kind of as profitable as what you would expect in the past, and this is causing some capitulation within the Kaspa ecosystem. Now, of course, this can always flip around at any point, but this is another thing that I think does cause potentially some concerns there for the Kaspa community as it relates to miner profitability. So again, I just want to kind of show you what we've seen with the Kaspa power law it is obviously, of course, really starting to deviate quite wildly from what we had in an otherwise a very, very close kind of regression fit here. So we'll have to see. Again, of course, only time will tell, but this is something that I am keeping a very close eye on, because it is changing kind of the math here for many people as they were looking toward kind of reviewing and understanding what Kaspa is. So again, overall, hopefully you found the information in this video useful. If you did, of course, a like and subscribe does help. I personally am still remain bullish and interested in what Kaspa is doing. I think a lot of the fit, or like the product market fit and the adoption, a lot of this can come when retail comes back. As I mentioned earlier on, there's really just not many people paying attention. There's a general sense of malaise or disinterest in the crypto market right now. And so when we start to see a little bit more excitement and, kind of frenzies going on in the crypto space, I think this can change a lot. So I would say stay patient, make sure that you kind of are doing your due diligence and you understand what you hold. If you understand what you hold, probably shouldn't be too worried about kind of where things are at currently. It might even be just an absolutely fantastic buying opportunity. So again, keep everything in mind, make sure you're not doing anything crazy. And if you do have any comments, I would love to hear them. Feel free to drop those in the comment section below. I do try to read and respond to all of those. So if you have anything that you want me to see, that would be a great way to do so. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.